This is the Franchise QB Podcast, where we empower entrepreneurs to win big in franchising. We huddle up weekly to educate our audience about the most successful small business model ever created, franchising.
Welcome to the Franchise QB Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Halpern, a 20-year industry veteran and entrepreneur. My mission is for listeners to achieve their American dreams of creating wealth and independence through franchise ownership. Every week, we speak with franchisees, franchisors, or vendors that support the industry. Thank you for joining us, and let's get started. Joining us in the huddle today is Luke Carlson, CEO of Discover Strength. Welcome to the show, Luke.
Mike, very excited to be with you.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining me. So you're the founder and CEO of Discover Strength, based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Discover Strength's personal training studios are among the highest volume training facilities in North America. You're an American College of Sports Medicine certified exercise physiologist and have a BS and MS in kinesiology from the University of Minnesota. You've also graduated from the Executive Leadership Strategy and Innovation program at Stanford University, where you speak around the world on leadership, management, and evidence-based exercise. You founded Discover Strength almost 20 years ago. Luke, take us back to the early days, to what it was like to open your very first studio.
Yeah, I was a strength and conditioning coach in the NFL, and I was going to graduate school full time. And I thought, I'm either going to get a PhD and become a tenure track professor, or I'm going to become a head NFL strength coach. Both of those lives sounded wonderful to me. I had a mentor that pulled me aside, kind of an industry icon. And he said, I don't think you should do either one of those. I think you should think about starting a business. I didn't know anybody that owned a business. I didn't know any entrepreneurs. I had recalled that I met one guy that owned a health club in Gainesville, Florida. So I called him. His name is Joe Cirilli. And I called him and said, could I come down and maybe you could sit down with me and have lunch and tell me how to start a business? So I flew down and met with him. And at the time, he was the only business owner that I knew. Well, it turns out he runs about the most profitable health club in the world, and he has for 30 years. He's going to get inducted. I'm going to be a part of it this Sunday in the Health and Fitness Association Hall of Fame. He's an icon. He's been featured in Inc. magazine and Forbes and Fortune. So he said, you should probably read a few business books, right? He gave me Jim Collins' Good to Great and Built to Last. I flew home, started reading those books, and I started daydreaming and writing about core values and purpose and what our strategy was going to be. And then 2 years later, we opened our first location. So Discover Strength opened 20 years ago, one personal training studio, about 1,600 square feet. The focus was one thing, and it was strength training. We did one-on-one and small group strength training. That is still what we do today, one-on-one and small group strength training. We started with that one studio in 2006. And by 2012, took us a long time to open up a second studio. We opened up a second studio in 2012, third studio in 2012, and we built from there.
Wow. Yeah, you're talking 2006. That is when I became self-employed also. So I worked for someone else for 5 years, figured out the franchise space and said, I'm going to take this risk and jump in and start a business. So I remember what it was like to figure it all out, right? And that's awesome that you had a mentor that was in the space that could give you some guidance as you got started. And it seems like a full circle moment that you get to celebrate his accomplishments at this award ceremony. So, Luke, what convinced you that evidence-based strength training could become a scalable business?
Yeah. So to me, going through undergraduate and graduate school, I was in a classroom all day long learning about motor units and muscle fibers and all of the exercise science, all of this research about the benefits of resistance training and how do we actually do it. And today we call that evidence-based exercise. The idea that, well, there's actually a preponderance of scientific research that says, well, this is how you produce the best results from your workouts. And at that time, this is over 20 years ago, I'm thinking there's a lot of people engaged in exercise. People are working out. And there's also all this scientific research that's being published seemingly every day, every week, but there's a chasm. There's just no connection between all this wonderful scientific research and how people actually work out. So I said, well, I'm going to spend the rest of my professional life. We're going to build a business around bridging that gap, connect the scientific research on how people actually strength train. So we got lucky 20 years ago that we decided to focus just on strength training. That was the only thing I was interested in. I was passionate about it. The research said it's really important for people. Mike, my goodness, over the last 20 years, the importance of resistance training has only increased in the consumer's awareness. We now have so much medical research that says this is the foundation of effective exercise. So I feel a little bit lucky that that was our obsession. That was our passion, over 20 years ago. And today it turns out that it is a medically significant form of exercise.
Yeah, I experienced it firsthand. I went to a studio that you have here in the DC area on 14th Street. And when I left there, it was like an eye-opening kind of moment. Like the light bulb went off because I had never lifted weights that way. I'd never strength trained that way. And it was effective. And I felt it the next day. I was like, okay, this is working. So that's really neat that you laser focused in on that specific movements. Was there a moment early on, back in '06 or even in '12 when you expanded, when you realized that Discover Strength could become something much bigger than that single studio?
Yeah, I was aware of it when we would work with, literally in the first few weeks, we would work with one client and that client would leave. And within the next week, we'd have 2 or 3 people call, email, and say, hey, I heard about the workout from Mike. I want to try it. And we spent no dollars on marketing. And we had more and more and more customers emailing and calling to schedule workouts with us. And we did not have a beautiful location. Our original location was not attractive. I think we had wonderful equipment and our staff was truly excellent. I was pretty proud of the product that we provided, but it was not like a beautiful location or even a beautiful market. But with every passing week, we grew and we grew rapidly. And so within a matter of, I'll say a few months, but definitely a couple years, people started reaching out and said, hey, can we come and visit your studio? Colleagues would. Or people would say, hey, will you join us on our podcast? And my first response was usually, what's a podcast? Or will you come and speak at our conference about the number of sessions, the number of workouts? That was our big KPI that you're doing, because we've never heard of a personal training business doing that many workouts or that much revenue. And of course, I'm thinking, I didn't know that our numbers were significant. We were just comparing ourselves to a previous version of ourselves. And so that's when I thought, okay, this is working. We're producing revenue. We have good unit economics. We could probably do this at another location. We could probably continue to replicate this.
Yeah, that's interesting because, then you subsequently decided that, you've scaled it, you proved that it can operate outside of that first founding location back in '06. And then you decided franchising was a path you're going to, go down. And there's a difference between multiple units that you own and you staff and you operate and, entering the franchise model. So what made you decide that you're going to go down the path of franchising to complement the successful multi-unit corporate growth that you had there in Minneapolis?
Yeah, we opened in 2006. I'm on a plane in 2018 and I'm reading a book on franchising, right? For me, almost all of my discoveries, all of my breakthroughs come from reading a book of some kind and just reflecting on it. So I'm reading a book written by the guy that started iFranchise. And I'm halfway into the book and I'm thinking, okay, this is absolutely the path for us for a number of reasons. One, I thought our concept was franchisable because we had wonderful systems and processes already in place. I had read Michael Gerber from the early days, and he said, build your one unit as if you're going to franchise it to 1,000 units, have systems and processes. So that was number one. Number two, the business was not about me. We had personal trainers working with our clients every day of the week. Many of them had never met me or worked with me at all. So I knew that I wasn't the secret to the business. It was scalable or replicatable with other people. That's number two. Number three is we had great unit economics. I knew what our overhead was and I knew how much revenue we could generate. And I think if you don't have great unit economics, you probably shouldn't think about franchising. And then the last
Right.
one, and this was the most important for me, was we were really interested in developing other exercise professionals and developing other entrepreneurs, business leaders. And I was at a point where I was on a plane every other week speaking about our approach to business. I was at every conceivable conference and peer executive groups and you name it. I was speaking about exercise or business seemingly every week. And I thought it would make more sense if I shared all of this maybe with our own system, with our franchise owners, with our exercise physiologists rather than other businesses. And I still enjoy interacting and speaking with other businesses and other industries, but it made more sense to do it in our own system. I have met a few individuals that are interested in launching a franchise, but that's not a passion of theirs, right? Building out training and development and teaching and all of the learning management systems that are involved in building a franchise. That was our jam. That was what I was passionate about. That's what we had been doing for a while. So those things came together and we thought, well, this makes sense. We should think about franchising. And of course, as we started to learn that business, it is a whole different business. And it's been very,
Right.
very exciting to learn that business. And I love the idea of aligned interests, and we do well when the franchisee does well. And if we make sure that we're always focused on the success of our Z's, that's how we become successful. Very much aligns with how I think about all of our stakeholders, whether it's a vendor partner, a franchisee, one of our employees, the home office.
Yeah, very cool. So to that end, I mean, to build a great system, that has to be by selecting really good franchisees, right? Not someone that can just write a check, someone that is going to be aligned with your culture and is in it for the right reasons. So in your view, based on the fact you've been franchising for a while, what qualities are you looking for that make a great Discover Strength franchise owner?
Yeah, man, you really nailed it for us. I remember 20 years ago, the first interview I did for personal trainers, our first location. I started with a speech about principle discovered by Jim Collins and his research teams as he writes all of these business books. He says, the most important discovery my research teams made is the principle, first who, then what. And smart people heard Jim Collins share this and they thought, okay, you got to have great people. People matter. Talent matters. And Jim Collins said, that's not what this principle means. That's not the discovery from our research. The discovery from our research is this. It's the firms that placed a disproportionate emphasis on the who decisions outperform the companies that focus first on the what decisions. Now, a what decision is like strategy and tactics and technology and finance, all important. They were just less important. Sequentially, they came second to the who decisions. So Jim Collins said, who you go to work with every day matters. We've believed that for 20 years. As we transitioned into franchising, we collectively as a team said, wow, who we bring on as a franchise partner is everything. That's the most important decision. And Mike, I know all I've done is repeat what you already said, but it aligned with this principle that we were already obsessed with. First who, then what. So for us, the things we're looking for in a franchise owner is, are they aligned with our core values, firstly? Are they inspired by our core purpose to lead a movement in evidence-based exercise? Okay. Will they elevate the work that an exercise physiologist does? Are they in the local market at least 50% of the time? That's something that we want. Are they interested in building a team and developing a team? One thing we say is you have to be the owner that your ideal exercise physiologist is looking for, right? We're trying to hire wonderful general managers, wonderful exercise physiologists. Are you that owner that your ideal team member is looking to work for? And then lastly, you have to be passionate about three things, because our business is three things and it's equal part these three things. One, it's the workout, how we deliver a workout. Number two, it's our approach to leadership and management. And number three, it's our approach to customer service. It's all three of those things. A Discover Strength franchise is all three of those things. So if you're only interested in the workout, and you're not inspired by customer experience or hospitality, we're probably not a good fit. You have to be excited about those three things, because that's what the whole business is. And what we refer to that as the three obsessions. You have to largely be obsessed with those three things.
Awesome. So can you give us an idea of the footprint in terms of like geographically where you're located, how many locations are open, how many are coming soon for those listening that are kind of new to Discover Strength?
Yeah. So we have 36 locations that are open currently as we record here, end of Q1 in 2026. We'll open about 4 more over the next 3 to 4 months. We'll open a total of about 10 in the rest of 2026. So that's where we are currently. All of those will be franchise locations. We opened up a corporate location a few months ago in Washington, D.C. We'll continue to open up corporate-owned locations in 2027 and 2028, but nothing else in 2026. Of the 36 locations that we have currently, 9 are company-owned. The rest are franchise locations. We're in 12 states right now: Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa. We're in Colorado. We're about to be in Florida. We'll open a couple locations in Florida. We're in Arizona. We're now in New Jersey with more locations coming in New Jersey. Utah, I'm sure I missed somebody there. Got most of them.
Well, congrats on all your success. That's real exciting. So, as the founder and the CEO, I'm sure you want to be like really dialed into the quality and the integrity of these locations as you kind of spread your franchise reach, especially because you're so scientifically driven. How do you maintain that quality across the system?
Yeah, you're asking the right question. First of all, it's owners, leaders, and managers who have incredibly high standards, right? We need to have clarity around what should we obsess around, right? Where should we be a little bit weird because we care so much about these details? And then there's a heck of a lot of other details we have to not care about. So we need leaders and managers to understand what is the main thing, and can we relentlessly keep the main thing the main thing? So it's high standards around the things that are the most important. It starts with leaders and managers. And then from there, it's systems and processes that reinforce all of that.
Okay. I know leadership is a big deal. You are educated in leadership. You speak on leadership principles. What specifically has had the biggest impact on your team from a leadership standpoint?
Yeah, great question. I think it's the concept of shared vision. And sometimes vision's a word that's overused and maybe it's amorphous. Nobody knows exactly what it means. And leaders say, I'm a visionary leader. To me, shared vision means we're all rowing in the same direction around just a couple fundamental questions or just a few fundamental questions. And it's the magic is not that you have wonderful answers to these fundamental questions. It's that does everybody in the organization share the same answers? So those important questions to me are, what are our core values, right? That's the question. What do we believe? And then do our behaviors, decisions, and actions connect to those beliefs? The second question is, why do we exist? What's our core purpose? What's our fundamental reason for being? At the end of the day, it can't be about making money. What's the fundamental reason, the just cause, the infinite game that we're playing? So that's the second question. The third question is, we have to have clarity on what business are we in? We want a narrowly defined niche that we can own. All of our team, everyone in the organization needs to understand, well, this is the sandbox that we're playing in. We're never going to get outside of the sandbox. And with more clarity there, I think we can scale much faster. In fact, being really clear on what that niche is, I think is a key to scale. So that's a critical question. And then where are we going long term? What are we trying to build over the next 10 years? Everyone in the system needs to be on the same page on that. And again, I don't think our answers need to be brilliant. I mean, I'm very comfortable with our answers. We just need to make sure we have a team that's inspired by those answers, that's connected to those answers. All of our day-to-day decisions align with those answers. That, to me, is rowing in the same direction. It sounds like a cliche, but it's just, hey, if everyone was in a separate room and we put these questions in front of everybody, do they have the same answers? That's when I think an organization really starts to gain traction.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it's kind of nice to hear you say that you have that clarity and that shared vision. And it makes total sense. And I think people, across the entire team, whether they be exercise physiologists or managers or franchise owners or work for corporate, are all kind of answering the questions the same way, which means there's an alignment there and everyone's kind of working towards the same goals. So let's talk about, like, if someone wants to be part of this and they meet those requirements that you mentioned earlier, and they're a cultural fit and they're capitalized and they really want to promote health and all the things we discussed earlier. What is that startup cost range in item 7? I know with any brick and mortar, gray box, vanilla shell, there's going to be some variance, but what's the guidance there on what it costs to open up a studio?
300,000, 700,000. And that big range comes from what is your construction cost based on the market that you're in, right? Going to be a little more expensive to build in Washington, D.C. than Des Moines, Iowa. But of course, the equipment package, the pre-marketing, all of that is the same or very, very similar. There's variability in construction costs.
Okay. And with SBA, funding, you can get in for 100,000, 150, something like that. So it's an approachable, it's an asset heavy business. There's a lot of advantages there with bonus depreciation, and sounds like a concept that might seem out of reach to some candidates, but ultimately could be a really good fit if you fund it. So do you guys provide any item 19 guidance in terms of how the business performs?
Yeah, our item 19 we think is incredibly transparent. Everybody can look that up. We want to continue to share every detail on our item 19. The answer is yes, Mike.
And is it based on corporate performance, franchised?
Or yeah, they're all listed. Yeah.
Super. Love it. Love that transparency. Well, Luke, this has been awesome. I'm a huge fan of your concept. I told you in the green room, I've been there before. I think it's an amazing, so different than anything else we have here in the DC area. Anything else you want to add to the mix before we wrap up today?
No, Mike, this has been comprehensive. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, if anyone listening would like to connect with Luke and his team to learn more about becoming a franchise owner with Discover Strength, contact me at franchiseqb.com. I'll get you connected. Thank you so much, Luke, for taking the time to get in the huddle with us today.
My pleasure.
You got it. Thank you for listening to the Franchise QB podcast, where you're at the helm of your future as a franchise owner. If you enjoyed the content, please rate the show and recommend it to anyone that might be interested in franchising. Make sure to visit franchiseqb.com to subscribe to my newsletter and for an actionable playbook to go from walk-on to legend in your new business. Follow us on Twitter at QBFranchiseQB and join us every week for a new episode. See you next time.
Visit franchiseqb.com to take the next step of your journey towards wealth, independence, and franchise ownership. And remember, when working for the man gets old, you must do something bold. Thank you for listening.